Welcome to episode 56 of Priviso Live. This is Lynn, here with John and Stephen, ready to discuss information security, risk, ICT legislation, and AI. And did you know that the 14th of October will be Ada Lovelace Day? We discuss why this Victorian lady gets acknowledged in the world of IT.
I'm Stephen. Welcome, listeners.
And I'm John.
We've got a packed episode covering everything from the ghost of Y2K coming back to haunt us in 2038, to OpenAI's latest crackdown on malicious AI uses, and Google's massive new enterprise AI rollout, and of course the fascinating history of Ada Lovelace and the analytical engine.
So grab your coffee, settle in, and let's get into it.
All right, let's start with something that sounds like a bad sequel, Y2K38. Stephen, you were probably still in school during the original Y2K panic. What's this all about?
Thanks for aging me, Lynn. But yes, the year 2038 problem affects systems that use a 32-bit integer to store time as the number of seconds that have passed since the Unix epoch, which began on January 1st, 1970. When the clock hits 3:14:07 UTC on January 19th, 2038, those systems will overflow and essentially break.
Researchers are now warning that this isn't just a date problem, it's a full-blown security vulnerability. We're not just talking about clocks resetting, we're talking about authentication systems failing, financial transactions going haywire, and embedded systems in critical infrastructure crashing.
So this is like Y2K, but potentially worse because we have way more interconnected systems now.
Exactly. And the scary part? The 2038 bug is already causing issues today. Any software that tries to work with dates beyond 2038, like financial systems calculating 30-year mortgages, could fall over this bug right now.
That's the thing people don't realize. This isn't a future problem. If you're signing a 30-year mortgage today, or if your organization is doing long-term planning with legacy systems, you're already in the danger zone.
Okay, so what's the fix? Can we just update everything to 64-bit?
In theory, yes. Debian, for example, is sidestepping the bug by switching to 64-bit time for everything but the oldest supported hardware, starting with Debian 13. But John, from a corporate perspective, how realistic is that?
Not very. Think about embedded systems, medical devices, industrial control systems, and aviation equipment. These things have life cycles of 20, 30, even 40 years. You can't just update a pacemaker or a power grid controller like you update your iPhone.
So what should organizations be doing right now?
3 things: inventory, assessment, and migration planning. First, you need to identify the systems in your network that are vulnerable. Second, you need to assess the risk. What happens if this system fails? And third, you need a realistic migration plan that accounts for the fact that some systems simply can't be updated.
And from a legislative standpoint, we're going to need some serious regulatory pressure here. This is exactly the kind of thing where industry won't move fast enough without mandates.
That's a sobering thought. All right, we'll keep an eye on this one. 13 years sounds like a long time, but in infrastructure terms, that's tomorrow. Now, let's shift from legacy systems to cutting-edge AI, specifically how it's being weaponized. OpenAI just dropped their October 2025 Threat Intelligence Report, and John, you've been digging into this.
The headline is this: since OpenAI began public threat reporting in February 2024, they've reported on over 40 networks affected because users violated their usage policies, including uses by authoritarian regimes to control populations or coerce other states, as well as scams and other malicious activities.
40 networks. That's substantial. What kinds of threats are we talking about?
It's a wide range. The report details a growing trend of threat actors integrating artificial intelligence into their existing toolchains rather than developing AI-driven workflows from scratch. So they're not necessarily using AI to do something completely new. They're using it to do what they already do, but faster and at scale.
Can you give us some examples?
Sure. We're seeing AI-powered social engineering, where attackers use GPT models to craft more convincing phishing emails in multiple languages. We're seeing cyber espionage operations using AI to analyze stolen data more efficiently. And there are even deceptive employment schemes where fake recruiters use AI-generated communications to scam job seekers.
And here's what concerns me from a security perspective. These aren't sophisticated nation-state actors exclusively. Some of these are relatively low-skilled criminals who are now punching above their weight because AI gives them capabilities they wouldn't otherwise have.
That's the force multiplier effect everyone's been worried about.
Exactly, and OpenAI is trying to get ahead of it. They're working with industry peers, they're sharing threat intelligence, and they're actively shutting down accounts. But it's whack-a-mole on steroids.
Right. And again, this is where legislation is desperately needed. We need clear frameworks for AI provider liability. If a platform is being used to perpetrate fraud at scale, what's the provider's responsibility? What are their obligations for detection and reporting?
And that's complicated because you don't want to stifle innovation, but you also can't have the Wild West.
It's the same tension we've seen with social media, content moderation, encryption. All the tech policy debates of the last decade are now playing out again with AI, but faster and with higher stakes.
And here's the thing. OpenAI is being relatively proactive here. They're publishing these reports, they're being transparent. However, not every AI provider will be as responsible. We need baseline standards that apply across the board.
Kudos to OpenAI. So if you're a CISO or an IT security manager listening, what should you be doing?
First, assume your adversaries are employing AI. This alters your threat model. Second, if your organization uses AI tools, you need clear acceptable use policies. Third, you must monitor for AI-generated content in your security operations, including phishing detection, fraud prevention, and insider threat detection.
Sobering stuff. All right, let's move to something a bit more business forward. Google's new Gemini Enterprise offering. Google has just announced Gemini Enterprise, which appears to be their major move to compete with Microsoft and OpenAI in the workplace AI space. Stephen, break it down for us.
Gemini Enterprise targets large organizations, starting at $30 per person per month, while Gemini Business for smaller clients costs $21 per person per month. The platform enables corporate workers to build agents that draw on data from Box, Microsoft, and Salesforce products.
So essentially, they're trying to be the AI layer that sits on top of your entire enterprise stack.
Exactly. Google says AI is presenting a once-in-a-generation opportunity to transform how businesses work and run. But the first wave of AI has been stuck in silos, unable to orchestrate complex work across multiple systems. Gemini Enterprise is their answer.
Isn't this just the Google version of Copilot? How do they compare?
Well, they are comparable in that both are enterprise-grade AI assistants intended to embed AI capabilities into everyday workflows, extract value from organizational data, and allow agent-like automation. However, the choice between them will come down to which larger ecosystem your organization is committed to, Google or Microsoft, how deep your security and compliance needs are, and what kinds of tasks you want to automate, document workflows, meetings, code, etc.
In environments where both ecosystems coexist, it's conceivable that an organization might use both, say, Gemini for Google-based workflows and Copilot for Microsoft ones, though that adds complexity.
Okay, but from a security perspective, this sounds like a potential nightmare. You're essentially giving an AI access to all your corporate data across multiple platforms.
That's exactly the concern. This is where we need to discuss data governance, access controls, and audit trails. If you're going to deploy something like this, you need ironclad security.
Google's pitching this as secure by design, with enterprise-grade data protection and compliance certifications. But John's right. The attack surface here is enormous.
So what are the legitimate use cases and what are the red flags?
Numerous. Sales teams utilize AI to draft proposals, drawing from your CRM and knowledge base. HR employs it to answer employee questions about benefits and policies. Finance uses it for data analysis and reporting. The productivity gains are genuine.
And the red flags? Giving AI access to sensitive data without proper controls. Not understanding what data the AI is trained on versus what it has access to. The lack of clear policies regarding what employees can and can't do with these tools. And failing to consider the compliance implications, especially in regulated industries.
And from a legislative angle, where does this fit?
We're in this weird gap right now where the technology is moving faster than regulation. GDPR covers some of this from a data protection standpoint. Industry-specific regulations or financial services regulations apply. However, comprehensive AI governance frameworks are still lacking in most jurisdictions.
Although the EU AI Act is starting to provide some scaffolding there, and don't forget the California Transparency and Frontier Artificial Intelligence Act we discussed in a previous episode.
True, but even that's going to take years to fully implement and enforce. In the meantime, organizations need to self-regulate, and that means treating AI deployments like any other major IT project. Risk assessment, security review, compliance check, change management, training.
John, you've been tracking some additional AI developments.
Lots of movement in the AI space generally. We're seeing more organizations implementing AI governance frameworks, more investors asking about AI risk management, and more regulators paying attention. The maturity curve is steep right now.
I've also been monitoring the cybersecurity landscape. There's been ongoing evolution in ransomware tactics, more supply chain attacks, and greater sophistication in social engineering. The threat environment is not becoming easier.
But now let's travel back to Victorian England to meet a woman who saw the future of computing a century before the first electronic computer was built. Her name was Ada Lovelace, and she's often celebrated as the world's first computer programmer. But who was she really, and what did she actually contribute? Let's dive in.
Ada Byron was born in London in December 1815, and she entered the world already famous. Her father was Lord Byron, one of the most celebrated and scandalous poets of the Romantic era, although Ada never knew him.
Her mother, Lady Byron, was terrified that Ada would inherit her father's volatile poetic temperament. So she prescribed an unusual cure: mathematics. In an era when women were rarely educated beyond basic literacy and accomplishments like music and needlework, Ada received rigorous training in mathematics and science from private tutors.
Her mother believed that the discipline of logic and reason would counter any dangerous imaginative tendencies. But Ada didn't choose between logic and imagination. She combined them. She called her approach poetical science, believing that intuition and creativity were essential to understanding mathematics. This unique perspective would later allow her to see possibilities in computing that others, including its inventor, completely missed.
Women always bring something different, don't they?
I shouldn't admit it, but I've long held the view that you hire women for roles that require attention to detail.
Not sure I always agree.
Careful there, Stephen. At 17, Ada was presented at court as a debutante, entering London society. It really was such a formal time, wasn't it?
It was at one of these social events in 1833 that she met a man who would change the course of her life: Charles Babbage.
Charles Babbage was a brilliant mathematician, inventor, and quite honestly, a bit of a character. Born in 1791, he was a Fellow of the Royal Society and held the prestigious Lucasian Chair of Mathematics at Cambridge, the same position once held by Isaac Newton, Paul Dirac, and later Stephen Hawking.
But Babbage was frustrated. Mathematical tables, used for everything from navigation to engineering, were full of errors because they were calculated and copied by hand. Babbage believed machines could do better. In 1822, he proposed the difference engine, a mechanical calculator designed to compute polynomial functions and automatically print accurate mathematical tables.
Think of it as a massive mechanical calculator made of brass gears, wheels, and levers. The British government was so impressed they funded it, but the project became a spectacular example of overambitious engineering. The precision required for thousands of parts exceeded what 19th century manufacturing could reliably produce. The difference engine was never completed during Babbage's lifetime, though a working version was eventually built in the 1990s, proving his design was sound.
By the time Ada met Babbage in 1833, he was already conceiving something far more ambitious: the analytical engine. This wasn't just a calculator, it was a programmable computer, a machine that could be instructed to perform any calculation through a program, using punch cards similar to those used in jacquard looms to weave patterns in fabric.
Babbage saw the analytical engine as a better calculator. Ada Lovelace saw something entirely different.
Babbage and Ada formed an unusual friendship. He was 41, she was 17. He called her the Enchantress of Numbers. He invited her to see his demonstration models, and she was captivated. In 1835, Ada married William King, who became the Earl of Lovelace, making her Ada, Countess of Lovelace. She had 3 children, but continued her mathematical studies throughout.
The pivotal moment came in 1842. An Italian mathematician named Luigi Menabrea published a paper in French about Babbage's analytical engine. A friend suggested Ada translate it into English, but Ada didn't just translate it. She added her own notes, which ended up being 3 times longer than the original article.
These notes, published in 1843 under the initials AAL, contained something revolutionary. In Note G, Ada wrote what is now recognized as the first computer program, an algorithm for calculating Bernoulli numbers using the analytical engine. However, what makes Ada's contribution truly remarkable wasn't just the algorithm. It was her vision of what computing could become.
Babbage saw his analytical engine as a mathematical tool. Ada saw it as something that could manipulate symbols according to rules, not just numbers. She wrote, "The engine might compose elaborate and scientific pieces of music of any degree of complexity or extent." She imagined a future where machines could create art, process language, and perform tasks far beyond arithmetic. She understood that if you could represent something symbolically, music as notes, images as patterns, a machine could process it. This is the fundamental concept behind all modern computing, and Ada grasped it in 1843.
Ada anticipated AI a century before Alan Turing.
Now, I need to make an important clarification because this is where the story often gets muddled. Ada's famous notes and algorithm were written about the analytical engine, not the difference engine. These were 2 distinct machines in Babbage's work. The difference engine was the earlier, simpler design, the mechanical calculator for computing mathematical tables automatically. It was brilliant, but limited in scope.
The analytical engine was the revolutionary one, the programmable, general-purpose computing machine. It had memory, which Babbage called the store. It had a processing unit, which he called the mill. It could make decisions using conditional branching. It was, in essence, a mechanical computer.
Ada's contribution wasn't to the difference engine's hardware design. Her contribution was recognizing what the analytical engine could become, understanding that programmability changed everything. She wrote the first program, yes, but more importantly, she articulated the philosophy of general-purpose computing.
She also identified key concepts we still use today. She understood the idea of a loop, repeating operations to build complex calculations from simple steps. She anticipated debugging, warning that the machine would only be as good as the instructions given to it. The engine can do nothing but what we know how to order it to perform.
Tragically, Ada didn't live to see any computer built according to these principles. She died of cancer in 1852 at just 36 years old. the same age her father had been when he died. The analytical engine was never completed. Babbage died in 1871, his grand vision unrealized.
So young. A tragedy, really. For over a century, Ada's contributions were largely forgotten or attributed to Babbage. It wasn't until the 1950s, as electronic computers were finally being built, that historians rediscovered her notes and recognized their significance. Today, Ada Lovelace is celebrated as a pioneer of computer science. The US Department of Defense named a programming language Ada in her honor.
But perhaps Ada's greatest legacy isn't just that first algorithm, it's the vision she had of what computation could mean. She saw that machines could be creative partners, not just calculators. She understood that the manipulation of symbols, not just numbers, was the future of computing.
In our age of AI, machine learning, and creative algorithms, we're finally inhabiting the world Ada Lovelace imagined. Every time you stream music, ask an AI to write something, or process an image with software, you're experiencing the reality of her poetical science.
Ada Lovelace proved that the most powerful inventions come not from choosing between logic and imagination, but from combining them. And that's a lesson that's still relevant today, nearly 2 centuries later.
And that's all for Priviso Live Episode 56. Thank you for joining us. You are the reason that we do this.
Big thanks to everyone listening. As always, we want to hear from you. What are you seeing in your organizations? What questions do you have? Reach out to us on social media or through our website.
If you want to hear more of the same, subscribe to Priviso Live on Apple, Samsung, Spotify, iHeartRadio, or YouTube.
And if you need security, risk, or ICT legislation advice, contact Priviso Consulting directly at admin@priviso.co.za. Stay safe, everyone.